Today we're taking a look at the Superpowers Orion action figure designed by Jack Kirby. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Space Opera Xanadex Across the Unknown Dimensions of the Galaxy, a new original graphic novel from Image Comics coming in August. Pre-order now so you can make sure you get a copy. I'm also the author of Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater, which will be collected in a trade paperback edition this July. I did a video not too long ago about how I'd acquired Jack Kirby's personal collection of Superpowers toys, that he'd designed, and this one was not part of that collection. This is an interesting figure. It's different from the original Orion that we know from the New Gods comics, but it is a Jack Kirby design. I talked about this more in that previous video, but Jeanette Kahn and some of the people at DC were able to give Jack Kirby a really nice royalty deal on the characters that he had created for them in the 70s for the New Gods. It was the same deal that they would give to creators as if Jack had created these characters in the 80s. That sort of deal didn't exist back in the 70s. They were able to justify it to the higher ups. Was they hired Kirby to design the toys that they were going to use based on those characters he'd created. And so he came up with, redesigns of all the major characters from the New Gods in this toy line. And one of them was this Orion, really nice looking design Jack Kirby came up with. As in all the cases, adjustments and simplifications had to be made for the toy making process. Jack's toy designs were extremely ambitious, but I'm really pleased with how much of Jack Kirby's design made it into this final figure. One of the big design challenges was that they wanted to feature a face-changing component similar to the Masters of the Universe figure Man-E-Faces. It's very appropriate to this character. I'll show you how it works. This was my first time using this, and I always assumed that you'd sort of turn the top, that it was exactly like Man-E-Faces. You'd turn the top and he'd change faces, but it's actually got an interesting mechanism. When you squeeze Orion's legs to activate his cosmic punch, that's when his berserker rage kicks in, when he becomes sort of this angry god. Looking at the face, it's pretty true to the character in the comic. And yeah, you turn it back and reset it, so there's a little spring in there, and you get this handsome Orion face. So that aspect of it is very, very true to the character, very interesting. Kind of reminds me of some Power Rangers figures where you can change them into their sort of superhero persona. It's got like a little spring, so the instant change is pretty cool. Comparing it to Jack Kirby's design, Orion's an interesting character because Jack Kirby sort of designed him to go with his Astro harness, his Astroforce equipment, this sort of futuristic hovercraft thing that he flies through the universe. Once you took that away, his design was very simple. It kind of just came down to sort of the helmet and then this very sleek, simple superhero outfit, this, very bare bones, approaching Silver Surfer levels of simplicity. So really his helmet was, once you take away the Astroforce equipment, his helmet was kind of the one sort of standout element of his design. So for Jack's redesign, he sort of incorporated elements of the Astro harness into the costume itself. So he's got sort of this, we got that pentagon shape on the back. And again, the challenge of making him into sort of a Man-E-Faces style head changer forces this larger helmet where you need clearance for it to get from the one face to the other. An interesting thing to come through here is when Jack was getting ready to do New Gods, when he was going from Marvel to DC, one of the last stories that he did featured a Janus character, a character called Janus, who looked a lot like Orion. He was kind of drawn like Orion, and it was two brothers. One was good, one was evil, and one was sort of the angry version, one was the nice version, and so it's interesting that Janus was on his mind, and that we kind of get this this Janus-like iteration of Orion all those years later. And if you sort of look at the head, the way it's designed, it is literally a Janus head. It is the Roman god Janus, where you had two faces sharing one head at opposite sides. And another thing about the design I thought was interesting is Eternals was kind of the closest corresponding series to New Gods. It was almost like New Gods was his DC version and Eternals was his Marvel version. And so he's incorporated elements, and it's in Kirby's drawing, and it makes its way to the figure. He's incorporated elements of Icarus's figure. Icarus is almost like the Orion equivalent in New Gods. I mean, they're very different series, but there's enough similarities, and I think even in Jack's mind, he was maybe conflating the two, or just reluctant to give up a really cool design element. The boots that Jack gave him, these are not like the boots Orion has in the comic. These are more like light rays, sort of boot, sandal kind of thing. Same thing with this wrist guard. This feels a little more like light ray than Orion. Again, Jack Kirby revisiting a character that was very important to him, a central character to his story, and making it what I think is a very compelling design. You can't help but think of Man-E-Faces, and I'm sure Kenner, when they designed this character, was thinking of Man-E-Faces, and I'm sure Jack maybe had some familiarity with it too. And again, there's all the talk about Jack's Fourth World being an inspiration for the Masters of the Universe line. But it's interesting to consider Man-E-Faces. When the Man-E-Faces toy came out, I was super excited. My cousin had it. I just thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen, how he could change from sort of the robot and the monster form. Then I read the Man-E-Faces comic that came with the toy. When I got my own Man-E-Faces toy, I was able to read the comic that came with it. And Man-E-Faces was such an amazing design. And I feel like the story that they paired it with kind of took all the wind out of the sails, took all of the air out of the character. This character that looks kind of like this, badass cosmic warrior. It turns out he's a part of a traveling circus. He's an actor. He treads the boards. He's a thespian. He wears different masks. He can play different characters. And then face-changing curse that he gets grows out of that. There's just something about it that, I don't know, just makes the character a little less badass. And it carries over into the cartoon, this kind of, kind-hearted actor, a sensitive artist. And everything about the design sort of scream like he should be some kind of cosmic bounty hunter, a warrior of some kind. That's really what the design is screaming, and what I wanted, from this character as a child. And really, really something closer to Orion. I mean, imagine if Man-E-Face's backstory were closer to Orion's backstory, if he were sort of this tortured cosmic warrior who's, has to integrate these different sides of his personality, this sort of, angry monster that comes out from time to time, or this indifferent robot, and then this masked superhero face that he has. The sort of traveling circus, Shakespearean actor of Eternia feels like a little bit of a dead end for such a visually compelling character. If they had sort of followed Orion's lead a little more, the robot face is his superego, the monster is the id, the human face is the ego. It could have been cool seeing a warrior who struggles to integrate his analytical, maybe robotic side with his beast self. But it could have become a character for the ages, the way Wolverine or Conan or something has, instead of just being this piece of 80s kitsch. But I digress. So Orion, he goes into cosmic battle mode, and he turns into Richard Keel, Jaws from the James Bond movies. It's also this sort of spinning mechanism where you sort of press a button and a spring-activated twist happens. It's kind of reminiscent of the Power Lords, which was another toy I was fascinated with as a kid, and where there wasn't enough thought put into the narrative that went along with it to sort of match the compelling visuals. But yeah, back to Orion. An interesting thing about this costume, you'd think it would be sort of a piece of kitsch that would be, abandoned. If you didn't know the whole backstory and didn't know that Jack Kirby actually designed this, you'd think, oh wow, they really, fucked up, one of Jack's great characters, one of his signature characters, and gave him this costume. But taking a closer look, it does feel like, Jack entered into this assignment with some amount of enthusiasm. And it is a nice design. Probably, if there were a version where he had a helmet that's closer to the actual Orion helmet, which again, I think is one of the great helmet designs of all time. It's really tricky to draw. I've drawn it a number of times, and those ears are very tricky. There's sort of, the ears on the side of the helmet are something only Jack Kirby could figure out. They're supposed to be sort of like wolf ears as opposed to eagle's wings that would be on Captain America's mask or Thor's helmet. Walt Simonson definitely saw something in this design. So when he did his Orion series, he incorporated it into the story. It became Orion's costume, like going forward for the majority of the series. When Orion is getting ready in that comic for his big final battle with Darkseid, he needs to sort of upgrade his battle suit for this final battle. And so this, armor incorporates, literally incorporates elements of that Astro harness, the Astro Force equipment. Good on Walt Simonson for recognizing a strong design when he sees it and making it work for him. Really, really looks good. And yeah, Orion's costume has been redesigned a number of times. I think addressing the issue that a lot of people saw with it. Again, to me, his costume's great. It works. Jack can do complicated designs. He can do simple designs. I do understand somebody looking at it and saying, okay, we need to zhuzh this up a little. We need to give this a little extra something. And so they tried, usually unsuccessfully. Simonson really makes this saying, it feels very close to Simonson's design sense. Like these gloves, these sort of wrist guard, and the boots do seem like they're part of Simonson's visual vocabulary. There's sort of an irony that when this version does appear in comics, it's drawn by Carmine Infantino, the person who was responsible for the decision to cancel the New Gods in the first place. All those years later, sort of found himself in the position to draw the tail end of the comic series of these same Jack Kirby concepts that he saw as being unsustainable or lesser than, and making the decision to pull the plug. It is interesting to see that sort of thing come full circle. It would have been interesting to see Jack, do something with this design in his comics. Just as a comparison, here's the Superpowers version of Darkseid. Kind of a giant. This final battle between the two does seem to have, pretty epic feel, some epic stakes. Darkseid does seem like a pretty unbeatable looking foe. It's nice to finally have this in my collection. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Space Opera Xanadex Across the Unknown Dimensions of the Galaxy, a new original graphic novel coming in August from Image Comics. Pre-order your copy now. And I'm also the author of Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater, which is coming back in July in a collected trade paperback edition. I'll see you next time.